This video lecture addresses values and ethics in the field of ecological restoration. As the field of restoration ecology is considered relatively young, so too is the concern for ethical dilemmas in restoration ecology. Some students of restoration ecology may be familiar with the earlier works directly addressing this topic, such as Faking Nature by Robert Elliott, which addresses the value of nature, restoration, and replacement of nature, and naturalness, among other topics. In The Call of the Wild, The Struggle Against Domination and the Technological Fix of Nature, Eric Katz discusses human and animal encounters to address the existence of value in nature. In the abstract, Katz notes, quote, "To attempt to manage natural entities is to deny their inherent autonomy, a form of domination. The moral claim of the wilderness is thus a claim against human technological domination." Page 265. Following Elliott's and Katz's thoughts on the ethics of restoration, Andrew Light responded in several essays. Among them, he says, quote, "Specifically, I will advocate an alternative philosophical approach to the ideas about the value of ecological restoration raised by Eric Katz and other philosophers who claim that restored nature can never produce the actual value of nature. I will make this contrast more explicit and further argue that Katz's view in particular are not sufficiently sensitive to the values at work in the variety of projects falling within the category of ecological restoration. We need a more practically oriented philosophical contribution to discuss ecological restoration policies than environmental philosophers have provided so far." Light, 2006, page 398. So it seems there is hardly consensus on topics related to ethics in the field of restoration ecology. Kluhl and Aronson, 2013, present a four-quadrant model for considering ethics in ecological restoration. The right side reflects objective value, such as those things that cannot be quantified through measurement, while the left side reflects subjective values such as aesthetics. The top half of the model reflects individual values such as personal fulfillment, while the bottom half reflects collective values. They credit Wilbur, 2001, as the inspiration for the four-quadrant model. In the upper right, we think of the features in the upper left, we think of the individual human reaction to ecological impairment. This is an emotional response to ecological impairment. And now, in the upper right, we think of the features of reference standard systems, that is, the valuable attributes of nature. Kluhl and Aronson, 2013, see this as our rational response as individuals based on how the individual understands the influences of impairment on natural areas, community structure, and processes. In the lower right, we think of the accepted socioeconomic values of ecosystem services. In a way, this can be seen as what has been lost or what we may face due to the loss of those services. These services should be recoverable with restoration. In the lower left, we think of a specific site lost, perhaps public lands or an area of religious or cultural importance. Restoration of these sites, when community involvement is a key component, strengthens community ties and builds eco-literacy in children. Another interesting note regarding this four-quadrant model: each of the quadrants is separated with double lines, reflecting independence and separation from the other quadrants. As such, all quadrants must be considered in ecological restoration for a more connected, complete, and cohesive result. So if we take another look at the four-quadrant model, we can see now that each of the quadrants is divided from one another with double lines, and this suggests that each quadrant, while standing alone, must be fully considered for a restoration project. Two major ethical questions come to light as we move through the writings in the ethics of ecological restoration. First, we must ask, can humans truly restore nature? If we answer yes, then we further ask, even if we can technically restore nature, that is, as part of Eliot's 1982 restoration thesis. Will we be able to restore the intrinsic value of nature? The concept of intrinsic value is critical in the larger field of environmental ethics. Intrinsic value perhaps comes from the natural processes that generated the ecosystem. So some philosophers argue that a restored site will never have the same value as a natural site. Second, we ask, if we agree that we can restore nature fully, then what reason do we have left for protecting nature in the first place? Another way of asking this question is, what's the big deal about filling in a wetland to make a parking lot if we can just build another wetland in a field down the road? It is worth considering these questions for a bit before beginning any major restoration project or planning effort. The restoration community has reacted in various ways to these questions. Some members feel that it is counterproductive to the field of restoration to even discuss them. On the other hand, others argue that restorationists are faced with a range of ethical challenges, from dealing with client expectations to declaring a restoration finished when it really isn't. Some of these are explored in readings by Carpenter et al., Dickinson et al., and Vidra. The following references were consulted in developing this video lecture.